Well, there might be some mistakes in the score, but I would say in general the score is correct, not the parts.
The score is correct, and not the parts.
Yes.
Because that's, of course, always a question, you know how it is when we're performing, and to find out, as you've just heard us play this, and we were interested to know if, as you've heard it, if that represents pretty much what you had intended.
Oh, yes, and I think it's an excellent performance. Very good indeed. I'm glad you kept the tempo moving, because it's a piece with a good deal of slow music in it. It's a summer piece with a feeling of summer, and but it mustn't be too lethargic, and in fact it mustn't be lethargic at all. It must keep moving, and you did. I noticed you put on the brulop at the end in the bassoon part.
That's right.
Where did that come from?
Well, we have the original parts from the Detroit group that first performed it, and Charlie Sarad, the bassoonist, told us about it, and I kind of like the first idea you had there.
I like it too. It's not here, but it's all right. Yes, I wrote this for the group in Detroit. They were men from the Detroit Symphony, and it was a rather nice idea. It was commissioned by the Detroit Music Guild, I think, and it interested me because instead of having the commission paid, my fee was not paid by one person, one rich person, or by a foundation. We all seem to live with foundations these days, but by a group of people, not one of whom paid more than, say, $10 or $20 for it, so that they felt it was their composition. And I thought it was a good idea, and it should be followed by other communities for many other composers all over the country.
It is a wonderful idea, and I think it's one that we're going to try to promote ourselves right here in Philadelphia.
Yes.
Good. There was even there was such a community interest in the piece of the people. They all felt they owned it. One lady had made a cake, a large cake, and the first theme was done in chocolate icing on vanilla, I think.
That's wonderful. I think that's a very tasty opening.
I'd like to interrupt this little discussion about your summer music to tell you that we have as our distinguished guest today Mr. Samuel Barber, the great American composer. You have seen and heard in our past 12 television programs a summary of the history of chamber music for woodwinds. You have experienced music of Bach and Vivaldi, Haydn and Mozart, people like Stamitz and Rossetti, composers of the Mannheim School, on to Paris, Onslow, Lefebvre, and getting into contemporary music, music of Milhaud, and going over to Scandinavia, music of Nielsen. And now we are back in the United States, and on today's program, we have played music, or will play music, of Samuel Barber. And it is with great personal pride that I introduce him formally to you. Sam, I remember many wonderful experiences in music with you centering around the Curtis Institute of Music here in Philadelphia. And when you were a Prix de Rome winner, I was very flattered that you came back into the horn section of the Philadelphia Orchestra and asked me some technical questions about the French horn. You remember that?
I was afraid to ask you. You were already a great star by that time in the Philadelphia Orchestra. But it's been a great pleasure for me to hear you and see you all again, because I think most all of us were in Curtis together. And then I remember so well going to the woodwind classes.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that, Sam. Your writing for the woodwind is really wonderful, very much admired by us. And I would like to ask you if your ideas were very much influenced by the woodwind classes held there.
Oh, I'm sure, yes. I'm sure that they were, because, in the first place, those were extraordinary sessions, and I'm glad that you got Mr. Tabuteau, that wonderful artist, on film, so that the public can see what you all went through. And, and here, it was not only listening to the woodwinds, and listening to alone and in small groups that was so important for a composer's ear. That's not so easy. Generally, you hear them with the orchestra against the background of strings. But also the wonderful musicianship, which I think he's transmitted to you all.
Well, you know,
Phrasing.
Sam, he came back to this country just this summer for the first time since his retirement from the orchestra. And we were, of course, so happy to see him and so pleased that he was able to appear on the series. But I'm sure you'll be interested to know that after he did this little interview with us, he went on a little vacation in Canada and did some fishing, and he came back, and when he was here just before he left for France last week, we played a recording of the summer music for him, and he was really very thrilled with it, and very, very pleased, and so happy not only for the wonderful music, but for wonderful music for Woodwinds, which of course is very close to his heart, as we all know.
On one of our earlier programs, I told how musicians get together whenever they visit various cities, how we exchange information, talk about music and instruments and things. And in connection with this, I have something that might interest you, Sam. When the Philadelphia Orchestra was in Russia this past year, in Leningrad, I met a young Estonian flutist who was there to hear our orchestra play. And we got in a conversation, and he asked me about woodwind chamber music, so I promised him that I would send him some. So later, after we got home, the quintet here sent him a copy of your summer music, and I have here a letter from him commenting on this. I would like to read you part of it. He says, "Since my writing, our quintet has given many concerts at home, in Trans-Caucasus, and in Central Asia. Especially interesting to our friends of chamber music was to hear very original quintet by Barber, which aroused great attention by its contemporary music and fantasy. Thank you once more for this wonderful work."
That's very kind of you to have sent it. That's rather quick, too, because it hasn't been published very long, has it?
No. Of course, we've known it since we received the manuscript parts from Detroit, and we played it for a couple of years that way. And then as soon as we got the copies from Schirmer, why, we sent them not only to Estonia, but
we sent them all over the world.
yes,
Poland,
Copenhagen,
Copenhagen, yeah.
Bucharest, and because we do feel that it's a magnificent work, and we're proud that it emanates from
This country.
America, and most of all, Philadelphia.
The trend
Yes,
is reversed.
At least your Russian could speak to you, and apparently rather good English. Last night when I met Ostropovich, the cellist, the famous cellist who played here, we wanted to talk to each other. He came out, but all he could do, he put his arms around me and sang the first theme of my cello concerto. That was the end of the conversation.
International language.
Yes, and how true it is.
I understand you had quite an evening last night meeting all these Soviet composers and all the American composers. Must have been very interesting.
We had a very good time. We couldn't talk too much because there's the language difficulty. They don't speak French or German and English, and we don't speak Russian, so there wasn't too much communication. It had to be done through interpreters, which cuts down a bit. But we had a very good time, and it was a fascinating experience to see them all here.
May I ask, how many Russian composers were there?
Kabalevsky, Shostakovich, Krennikov,
Yes.
and two others, and a critic, and somebody they were traveling with.
Yes. And there were some American composers too, besides yourself?
Yes, Sessions, Menotti, Dello Gioio, and others.
Did they mention your music that they know in Russia? The kind of music that they play over there, the American music that they play?
Well, they're beginning to. I was interested to know what of our music is played there, not only since the Philadelphia Orchestra went in the Philharmonic last year. Of course, they know that music. They come to all that to all those concerts. But I was also interested to ask them what music of ours they play when we're not there.
That they play themselves?
More pertinent.
Yes. I think Adagio.
Yes. Evidently the cellist knew your concerto.
Yes, and then the piano sonata is performed frequently because Van Cliburn played that there, and then he sent copies around and gave copies to his pianist friends. The whole distribution of music is very complicated because we have no agreement with them.
Yes. Well, I'm sure that your violin concerto will be soon played there, too, because I recall that we played it with the Philadelphia Orchestra in Brussels last year, and there were quite a few Russians in the audience at the time, and I'm sure they were impressed with it as much as we were.
Could I ask you a question about recordings of your works? Have you performed in any of your recordings of your works?
Well, I conducted a couple of things.
You conducted?
Yes, and I don't think I'll say too much about that. It wasn't a Philadelphia orchestra. It was an English orchestra. I did Second Symphony in Medea, and then the cello concerto.
Oh, yeah.
And then I played piano in recordings with Leontine Price. We did a song cycle called Hermit Songs, 13 songs. And that's all I've done.
Well, Sam,
I'm going to record for Stravinsky.
I was going to ask if you're going to do anything currently.
I'm going to do Les Noces. I'm going to play one of the piano parts in Les Noces with
wonderful.
3 other composers, Copland, Sessions, and Lucas Foss and I are playing the 4 pianos.
Oh.
So we all have to practice piano now.
well, you know, in the classical period, I think the thing that launched the woodwind group definitively in the minds of the composers, the 2 works probably were the Mozart and Beethoven piano quartets or quintets, and we're hoping that perhaps soon you will think of writing a quintet that will include piano, or rather a sextet, and then perhaps we would have the pleasure of having you play the piano with us on the recording.
It's a combination that I love. I love piano and winds.
We've just completed the recording commercially of the summer music, and I hope that it won't be long before there'll be something else for winds that we can do with you.
I would like to hear it. Are there many woodwind quintets in Europe?
Oh, yes, every capital.
Not in Russia, though. Not in Russia,
No,
no.
Russia,
Strangely enough.
This fellow that I have the correspondence with is behind the Iron Curtain, but he's in Estonia.
Uh-huh. But why aren't there?
The woodwinds don't seem to enjoy the eminence that they do in this country and other European countries.
Oh, you're all prima donnas in this country.
Can you imagine that the 2 works that I just spoke of, Mozart and Beethoven quintets, which are considered, of course, such great works in chamber music, I spoke with Richter, Stanislav
The great pianist.
the great pianist, and he did not know either one of these works.
Amazing.
To give you an idea how little woodwind music is used there, I don't know why, but that's just the way it is. And we, I think, did a great deal to stimulate their interest in this, and your music, of course, is going to even do more, because they're going to have contemporary works that have great value to display their instruments.
Sam, one of the problems that always comes up with instrumentalists who perform the works of composers like your own is that we always try to read things into the music, and we were fascinated when we first saw this composition titled Summer Music, to let our imagination roam and presuppose that all kinds of things were happening in this music. And then we find when we speak to the composers that they're just busy writing wonderful music, and they don't have these dream fantasies that instrumentalists have.
Well, sometimes we do, but in this particular piece, I don't think I did. I thought of it as music perhaps recalling summer and quiet, placid peace. And also, perhaps it's a little bit outdoor music. Perhaps it would sound well played out of doors. I think it was played in Rome out of doors in the garden, and I think that would it sound well out of doors?
I don't see why not.
Yes?
Yes.
We were very interested in the form of the composition, in that it takes about, I think, 12 minutes to perform, and it is continuous music, but yet it has a certain form of symmetry, or there's
Sort
the
of a
beginning,
rondo form.
rondo
Yes.
form, and we have the return of the themes. And
Well, I kept you all busy, didn't I?
yes,
certainly
but
did.
with enough rest to recuperate.
Had you intended at any time to make it into 2 movements, or was it all
No, I
original
always
intention
thought of it for being
as
one movement, yes.
Someone writing about your music says that Samuel Barber always uses wind instruments in an idiomatic way, but it always requires the greatest virtuosity, and now I know what they mean.
Well, I have them. I have all the virtuosos here today, so I've been very lucky. I like to develop, why not, the instruments and call for its, and ask for its maximum potentialities.
Well, I was going to say that your treatment of the winds is such that the parts are extremely difficult to play. They require an awful lot of wood shedding. but they are possible. So many composers write things that are extremely difficult and impossible and really are not worth the effort, but I must say that that's not the case with your music.
Well, Sam, it's certainly been wonderful to have you here, and I know that everybody's going to enjoy summer music. But the thing that really impresses us most in studying this entire area of woodwind music and its development is to find that now we have an art form, and that so many American composers and contemporary composers regard the woodwind quintet as an art form, and I think that your contribution is one of the greatest, and we want to thank you from the bottom of our hearts.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
This is National Educational Television.